In a quaint coastal village where the sea and sky met in a seamless blend of blues, stood a modest lighthouse. It had stood there for generations, guiding ships safely through treacherous waters with its ever-watchful beam. This lighthouse was cared for by an elderly man named Elias, known affectionately as the Lantern Keeper. Elias was a figure of gentle routine. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he would make his way to the lighthouse with a small lantern in hand. This lantern wasn't just any lantern. It was an old, brass heirloom passed down through his family for centuries. Its flame had always been a symbol of hope and guidance. One stormy night, as Elias prepared to light the beacon, a fierce wind howled and rain lashed against the windows. The sea roared with fury, and Elias could barely make out the churning waters from his small, cozy study. Yet, he continued his work with a steady hand, knowing the importance of his task. In the midst of the storm, Elias heard a desperate knock on the door. Opening it, he found a young woman, drenched and shivering. Her name was Clara, and she had been traveling across the sea, seeking her brother who had gone missing in the storm. Elias invited her inside, offering warmth and comfort. As Clara dried herself by the fire, she explained that her brother, a fisherman, had been caught in the tempest and had not returned. Elias listened intently, his heart aching for her plight. "I'll help you," Elias said after a moment's thought. "But first, we must ensure that the lighthouse stays lit. It's the only guide for those lost at sea." Clara nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude and hope. Together, they made their way to the top of the lighthouse. The storm raged outside, but inside the lighthouse, there was a sense of calm and purpose. As Elias carefully tended to the lantern's flame, Clara gazed out at the turbulent sea, her thoughts a whirlwind of concern and hope. Elias worked methodically, his practiced hands making adjustments and checking the mechanisms that powered the light. Hours passed, and the storm showed no signs of abating. Clara, exhausted but determined, kept watch with Elias. She wondered if her brother would ever see the light that they were keeping burning. As the night wore on, Clara's eyes began to droop. She had nearly fallen asleep when a faint, distant sound pierced through the storm, the sound of a horn, calling out through the darkness. Elias's eyes widened in recognition. "That's a distress signal," he exclaimed, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. "We need to signal them back." With Clara's help, Elias used the lighthouse's signal system to respond. They sent out a series of flashes, hoping to guide the lost vessel to safety. The minutes felt like hours, but finally, through the storm's haze, a faint light began to appear on the horizon. Clara's heart raced as she realized it was a boat. Elias's steady presence and the guiding light of the lighthouse had made all the difference. As dawn broke and the storm subsided, the boat came into view, making its way to the harbor. Clara's brother, exhausted but safe, stepped onto the dock. The reunion was a tearful and joyful one, filled with gratitude for Elias's bravery and the steadfast light that had guided them through the storm. Clara thanked Elias profusely, but he only smiled and shook his head. "It's what the lighthouse is meant to do," he said simply. "We all need a light to guide us when the seas are rough." As Clara and her brother departed, the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the village and the lighthouse. Elias watched them go, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. His lantern had not only guided ships, but had also brought hope to those who needed it most. And so, the Lantern Keeper returned to his daily routine, knowing that as long as he kept the light burning, he was doing his part to help others find their way in the stormy seas of life. Subscribe to Shortsvets.